So guys, until now we have seen the regulation of glycogen metabolism through the activity of what we say the canonical signaling pathway, that is through the GPCRs. But sometimes it's not, I mean, you need also some allosteric regulation, that is regulation by some other factors also other than the canonical pathways, canonical signaling pathways. So you should keep in mind for whatever sort of metabolic activity of any compound like glycogen is concerned, whenever we're talking about it, keep in mind that we have to think that what body needs. In case body already have a lot of food, that is it will have a lot of source for the glucose, what will happen that ultimately you don't need the degradation of the glycogen. But on the other hand, if you are deprived of food, or if your body is facing the lack of glucose, then definitely you will need more and more glucose, that is then the process of glycogenolysis or degradation of glycogen will be favored. So it all depends upon the need of the body, and the system have to adapt accordingly. So allosteric regulation is also important because it acts more rapidly, and sometimes depending upon the circumstances it overrides the hormonal signaling also. For instance, let's say when you are in a very well fed state, that is your body can really have a lot of, I mean, is provided with a lot of food or diet or whatever you say, and it has lots of glucose, then of course you don't need the breaking down of glycogen. So that's why the glycogen will be inhibited, and this will be inhibited by, for instance, like glucose 6 phosphate, ATP, and glucose. Of course, they all will act as negative regulators. They will inhibit the decomposition or degradation, rather degradation of glycogen. And of course, in reverse, they will favor the synthesis of glycogen. So if this left hand side is talking about the activity of glycogen phosphorylase, and the right hand side of this figure is talking about the activity of glycogen synthase. Of course, that means the right side is for the synthesis of glycogen and the left hand side is for the degradation of glycogen. So you can clearly see here that glucose 6 phosphate, if it acts as an inhibitor of what we say the degradation of glycogen, it will act as activator of glycogen synthesis by activating the glycogen synthase. Similarly, your muscle also need glycogen degradation because they need energy. So again, glucose 6 phosphate will act as an active regulator, ATP will also act as negative regulator, AMP will act as the positive regulator of degradation of the process of glycogenolysis, and reverse will be in case of synthesis of glycogen or glycogenesis. Also, when we come about action of or the regulation of glycogen by calcium, there are two ways that calcium can affect. One is the canonical way, that through GPCR based signaling, that calcium ions are released by hormonal control, and these calcium ions then activate the binds with the calmodulin, and calmodulin then activate the protein kinases then activate the further down stream enzymes, and in this way at the end of the day you get activation of enzymes or molecules which leads to the degradation of glycogen and you get more and more glucose. But this usually happens in the case of liver, this canonical pathway, this hormonal this hormonal pathway or this pathway in which the modulation of the regulation of glycogen degradation occurs through calcium. But in case of what we say muscles, things are quite different. In muscles, what happened is that because your muscles need energy, they are in a very rapid, urgent need of energy. And for that, this canonical pathway of hormonal based pathway may not be very suitable because it takes a little bit much time. So you need something which can give you energy instantly. So perhaps the most instant thing which occurs in our body is something which is being occurring through the action of nerve potential, nerve impulses. So what happens that the nerve impulses also then leads to the release of calcium ions from sarcoplasmic reticulum, and you get more and more calcium ions. These calcium ions then again bind with CAM, and CAM complexes then regulate the phosphorylation or the activation of the enzymes which are involved in the degradation of glycogen. So there are two ways that calcium can act here. One way is through canonical pathway, canonical signaling pathway, and the second way is through the nerve impulses. In both ways, you get at the end of the day the degradation of the glycogen. So from here, you can realize that depending upon the need of the body, a pathway can be interacted by different molecules. It can give same output by different molecules, by different enzymes, depending upon the conditions it is coping with.